Really. Today's guest is Samantha DeMarco, a life coach, storyteller, and survivor whose journey can be summed up in 4 words: from surviving to thriving. At 40, Samantha embraces life with the spirit of a teenager, especially when she's front row at a 90s boy band concert. But beneath the nostalgia is a story of resilience shaped by profound adversity. She had endured narcissistic abuse, sexual assault, religious trauma, the devastating loss of her mother, and most recently, a painful divorce. Yet instead of being defined by hardship, Samantha has chosen to hold space for both grief and joy. She believes that while we can't control the pain life brings, we can choose to create more of the good, and she does so by living fully, laughing loudly, and inspiring others to do the same. Passionate about normalizing conversations around mental health and personal resilience, Samantha shares her story to help others feel less alone. Her message is clear and powerful. Our struggles may shape us, but they don't have to limit us. We all have the ability to turn pain into purpose. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Take us back to the start of your journey. Where did it all begin for yourself?
Ooh, okay. So my journey really starts when I was a child. I grew up with a little bit, not a little bit, a quite chaotic childhood. I listened to my parents in their room arguing all the time. I always heard my dad yelling. It was kind of a walk around on eggshells type of environment. I didn't know it at the time, but I have ADHD and it was undiagnosed until about 2 years ago. So while I'm going through everything that I have been through in my life, there's also that underlying undiagnosed ADHD that is a source of so much stress for me, where I struggle to just cope emotionally. I feel like I was in second grade. I started to struggle to go to school where I would like cry and scream on my mom's leg, and my teacher would have to bribe me with stickers to get me to go to school because any day that I went to school without screaming and crying on my mom's leg, I can get a sticker. But I was extremely attached to her. And then when I got into middle school, I dealt with a lot of bullying. Kids start like get into that hormonal age and everything like that. And I was, I guess I was an awkward kid. I think that I really was struggling with so many different things because of my ADHD.
Yeah.
I was dealing with sensory issues that I didn't realize were sensory issues. So I cried a lot. I was made fun of for crying a lot. I dealt with so much of that where at such a young age, I felt like I wasn't good enough and I was too much all at the same time. And then my parents got divorced when I was at around that same time. And with my dad, it became a very in and out of my life type of relationship, which was so difficult for me to cope
Yeah.
with. And then on top of that, my dad, I'll call him, instead of calling him a narcissist, I'll call him an agitator, where he he just had a way of making me feel like shit about myself. Like if you messed up, you needed to feel ashamed of being messed up, of messing up. And sometimes messing up was just making him feel bad. Like if I didn't call him, then he would call me and yell at me for not calling him. And I'm like, but you didn't call me either until now. So I don't, he's like, well, I'm not going to call you unless you're calling me. Like I dealt with so much of that stuff. And I would go to my mom for comfort and for support. She was the protective parent, you know? And he would say things to me like, you don't want to hear anything that I have to say because I'm the only person that tells you the truth. You just go to your mom and your grandma because they tell you what you want to hear. So I kind of learned at a very young age that like trying to go for support was just being told what I want to hear. And the things that were true about me were all of the negative things that my father was saying to me. And I remember asking him, like, what? Why don't you ever tell me anything good that I do? Like, why is it you're always telling me that I'm doing things wrong? And I remember him saying to me, well, if I'm not telling you that you're doing it wrong, then just assume that you're doing it right. And it was like very unable to give me any kind of
Yeah.
praise or anything. So I grew up feeling so broken and just like I wasn't good enough. And then I started going to church with a friend of mine. And in that environment, the first church that I went to, it was so friendly. The youth pastor there kind of took me under their wings, like him and his wife. They saw that the kind of trauma I was dealing with my dad and how it was affecting me. So I honestly am still to this day so appreciative of them because they really did come alongside me and like listen to me, help me cope and everything like that. And if anything, there's always been other adults in my life who have been there and have been supportive when I didn't have it, from my father. Um, but because I started going to church, I started thinking like, oh, if my dad was going to church, then he would also like maybe he'd forgive me for all the things I've done wrong. And then he'll want to have a relationship with me. He'll come around, he'll this, he'll that. And he did start going to church while we weren't talking. And I remember when I graduated high school, I was originally supposed to go to a college in New York for music. And like 3 weeks before I was supposed to start, I got a notification that I didn't get any financial aid, that I was turned down for like the loans. Basically, there was no money for me to go to college. And at the time, my dad he pretty much manipulated me into going and living with him and telling me that, being there, I would be in a Christian environment all the time. I wouldn't be around all of this temptation that's, in this worldly environment. And I go live with him. And I ended up going to live with him and with his wife and their kid. They had two other kids, my brother and sister. So I went from a house with 5 kids into a house with another 5 kids, and then I add myself into that. So while I was there, I met someone at the church, and it was I don't know if you're familiar with Pentecostal churches, but they're very
No.
strict. They're very like authoritative, where like the pastor is the ultimate authority in the household, your father's the ultimate authority. And I started dating a guy, and in that kind of environment, it's encouraged to get married really young. Um, I think that their idea is that, oh, well, like younger people are going to have sex anyway, and sex outside of marriage is a sin. So we're
Right.
going to go ahead and encourage people to get married. So that way, if they want to have sex, they're not in sin. It's a really, really twisted mindset. But I did end up getting married when I was 20 years old against my own intuition. I
Yeah.
remember crying and before I got engaged, telling my dad that I thought I was going to break up with him, that I didn't think that, I should, marry my ex. And my dad was like, well, you're just letting your anxiety about me and your mom's relationship get to you, because my dad cheated on my mom and that's why they got divorced. So he's like, you're afraid that what happened with me and your mom's going to happen with you. So you're letting your anxiety get the best of you, and you're going to pass up this great opportunity to be with a guy that's a pastor, and you guys can go on and serve God together and you'll have this wonderful life. And because I didn't trust my own intuition, because I had been trained so much of my life to not trust my intuition, I was like, he's right. I have so much anxiety, and my anxiety disorder is going to ruin my life. So I should go through with this anyway. And I remember being on my honeymoon, like crying and being like, did I just ruin my whole life? And in marrying him, we moved to Texas to attend a Bible college there called Christ for the Nations Institute. And it was the worst experience I can imagine at a religious institute. It wasn't just a Bible college, it was a very culty Bible college
Right.
where there was a lot of brainwashing, a lot of manipulation, and a lot of political talk. And so, in that environment, mental health is also considered something that is a spiritual issue. So, it's not something that is, a health condition that should be treated by doctors and therapists. So while I was there and dealing with all of this intense anxiety, the ADHD is still undiagnosed. I've got people praying in different languages and shouting around me. I'm dealing with like all kinds of sensory overload at the time, and would break down and cry and would desperately want the anxiety to cease. And I would be told that I needed to have more faith, that I was not trusting God, and that's why I had anxiety, that there must be something in my life that is causing the devil to allow, that's allowing the devil to come into my life. So I was
Yeah.
like desperate to figure out like, well, what is it? And I started to eliminate like all the worldly things that made me happy. One of them being the Backstreet Boys. Like I love the Backstreet Boys. It brings me so much joy to listen to them. I stopped listening to that music. I only listened to Christian music. I only put sermons on TV. I was like determined to figure out what it was that I was doing wrong that was causing all of this anxiety. Um, After about 5 years of being there and just barely hanging on, my ex and I moved back to Pennsylvania to go and work in his parents' church as the youth pastors there and live in their house that was falling apart. Um, and that was like the beginning of the end of my first marriage. I was miserable in it. He was yelling at me all the time, constantly putting me down, constantly, raising his voice, not cursing at me because, we're at church, but Christian versions of cursing.
Yeah.
And constantly, again, I started getting sick because I was so stressed out. I remember there was a time that I had the flu and like 102 fever and was like asking him if he could please go to the store and, get me some medication. And he snapped at me and was just like, oh, you always want everybody to do everything for you. And like, you're just laying there. And meanwhile, I'm like burning up with 102 fever. And one thing that I'm so thankful for is my mom, because she would constantly tell me, listen, when you're done, you're going to be done and you'll know it, and I'll be there for you. Like, you pick up the phone and I will come and get you, and you don't have to endure this. You don't deserve to be treated like this, and you're going to get fed up eventually. And she was right. I did get fed up eventually. And it was around the same time that my aunt was leaving a job that she had and was looking for her replacement. So my mom recommended me, and I went out there and interviewed into from Pennsylvania to New Jersey, and I got the job. And a week later, I moved from Pennsylvania back to New Jersey and started rebuilding my life, basically. Left my ex and left the church, honestly, because I was like, if this is what God wants for me, I stayed in the marriage as long as I did because I felt obligated by the
Yeah.
church, but
Yeah.
I didn't feel any love, for him. It wasn't like, oh my God, I love him so much. How am I going to live without him? It became like he treats me terrible, but the church says I don't have, a valid reason to be able to divorce him. He watches pornography for hours and hours and hours a week. And because he's not physically cheating on me, like that isn't a reason that I can go. I remember the church telling me that I should make myself more sexually available to my husband if if I wanted him to overcome his struggle with sin. It was like everything was the wife's
Yeah.
responsibility to do? So I got really fed up with it. And it was like once I was away from that Bible college where there was so much of an echo chamber that I was in, I was able to listen and hear my mom a little bit better. And sure enough, as soon as I called her, she came, she picked me up. And I started working for a doctor and started rebuilding my life in New Jersey. And then I met a man that was like a dream come true. He came into my office one day. He was working for a local radio station and he did the marketing and he wanted to see if we were interested in advertising. And I thought he was super attractive, super charming. And so because I hope to see him again, I like told my doctor, hey, you should meet with this guy and like see if you want to do commercials with him. But it turned out that it actually worked out that they we joined a contract, and then he was now in my life. And after about a year of us just being like coworkers and, seeing each other for lunch meetings, we started hanging out outside of work. And then we started dating. And it was genuinely, it was like a fairy tale for me. Like, I couldn't believe that here's this man, he's treating me like gold. He takes me out to like great places. He's so thoughtful when it comes to gifts. He holds me when I'm crying. He understands that I have anxiety and he's patient with me. Like, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world to be dating him. And when we got engaged, he took me to a beach that we had kind of been at 3 years earlier. And we had fallen asleep on the beach when we first started dating and woke up to the sunrise. So he took me to the beach for the sunrise to propose. He had a photographer that was there that like captured pictures of it. Like, I had the perfect relationship, the perfect life. And we planned the perfect wedding. It was honestly, even to this day, still one of the best days of my life because everything that came after that hadn't happened yet. I was still
Yeah.
this happy girl who was marrying the love of her life that had her mom there. My dad didn't come to my wedding. He chose not to because I questioned two people that he wanted to invite because they hadn't talked to me in 10 years. And I was like, I don't want to invite them if they haven't talked to
No.
me in 10 years. And he decided that was enough to not come to my wedding, that I was disrespecting his family by not inviting them. And he decided not to come to my wedding. But I had the most amazing day. And my mom, like, she walked me down the aisle. She did a choreographed dance with me at the wedding. And my mom was noticeably not that well at the wedding. She had started to become really bloated, and it almost looked like she was pregnant. She is not, but there was so much bloating there that that's kind of how her stomach looked. And I remember asking her about it before, and she was like, I went to the doctor, he gave me medication, like my liver numbers are just off. He gave me the medication, normalize it. It's just going to take some time for this to come down. Thankfully, one of my friends that was at the wedding is a nurse who is also the daughter of my mom's best friend. And she said to her mom's best friend, listen, when this wedding is over tomorrow, you need to call Chris, my mom, and tell her to go to the emergency room immediately because that is not normal at all. So I remember when my mom called me and said she was going to the emergency room. She had gotten there. They were going to do procedure on her. And I was like, do I need to cancel my honeymoon? Like, is this an emergency? And she's like, no, it's a minor procedure. Like, go on your honeymoon. Everything will be fine. And it was, but they had to remove 14 liters of fluid from her stomach.
Cool.
And it became a pattern then over the summer that she would have this fluid build up and then she would go and have it removed. And on my birthday of that year, which was October, I had gone to her house because she was taking me out to dinner. And when I got there, her boyfriend was sitting downstairs and telling me that my mom was in bed and was really tired. And when I got up there, she would not get up. Like she was just like, I don't like, and that's just not like my mom. I was like, Mom, we were supposed to go out for dinner. Like, I understand if you're not feeling well, but like, tell me what's going on because this isn't normal for you to just be like, I'm tired, I'm tired. And she wouldn't say anything. I called her doctor. Tried to get her to go to the emergency room because the doctor was saying that she had, well, it sounded like hepatic encephalopathy, which is where you have these toxins like ammonia build up in your system. And then you really don't know what's going on. So I was seeing my mom not know like what's going on, refusing to go to the hospital. So the doctor just told us to give her as much Pedialyte as we possibly could. And so we did that. And she finally like came to and recognized who she was. And it scared the shit out of her that that happened. So she gave me then power of attorney to be able to make a decision if she couldn't make decisions for herself. And those episodes then became almost a bi-weekly thing where I was getting phone calls from my brother or from my mom's boyfriend saying that she was completely out of it. And we ended up having to call the ambulance, have her taken to the hospital against her will. I've had to hold my mom down in the emergency room with my sister while my sister was being bit by my mom, and we were screaming for like the nurses to come in because she had no clue what was going on. And when we finally got her admitted to the hospital, I remember asking the doctor, like, okay, what's next? Like, what do we do? This is happening all the time. And he's like, well, is she on the transplant list? And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I hadn't realized it was so serious. He's like, she needs a liver transplant. Like, she's going to die without a liver transplant. You guys need to get her on the list. And I remember my mom crying hysterically. I suspect she knew that and was trying to avoid it. And I suspect she was trying to avoid telling us because she knew what we would do next, which is we all went and got tested to see if we would be matches. Because with your liver, you can give half your liver and it regenerates.
All right.
So me, my sister and brother, all of her biological children, we were all perfect matches, which never happens. They said they usually bring in like 3 or 4 people and hope that one person is like a perfect match. But we were all perfect matches. And my brother ended up deciding he wanted to do it because he wanted my sister and I to be able to care for our mom afterwards. So they planned the surgery, and about 2 weeks before she was supposed to have surgery, she got the flu. She had to be rushed to the hospital because she was struggling to breathe. And one day I got a call early in the morning telling me that she was in respiratory failure. And I had to rush up to the hospital because they were needing to put her on a ventilator. And when I got there, they were in the room trying to put her on the vent and she was fighting it. And I remember going into the room and I don't know how I was so calm. I know now that part of ADHD is that you do really well in high stress situations, and then when the stress is gone, that's kind of when we fall apart. So like in this high stress situation, my anxious self just like snapped into gear and I was there for my mom. I went and held her hand. The doctor's like, I don't think you want to watch this. I was like, I don't care. I want to be here with my mom. And I told her, I was like, listen, mom, you're okay. Like, they're going to just give you this. It's going to help you breathe. Then you're going to go to sleep and you're going to wake up and you're going to feel so much better. So just let them put the tube in, let the medicine put you to sleep. Like, look at me. I'm your most anxious child that you have, and my face is perfectly fine. So if I'm not anxious, then you shouldn't be anxious. And they were finally able to get her under, and I'll never forget the fear that she had in her face. And like for me, I didn't know that anything I was saying was true. And when
Yeah.
I asked the doctors, they had told me she was the sickest person in the hospital that they had at the moment. And
Sure.
so my family and I ended up getting they had little apartments that you could stay in if you had somebody that was in the hospital and terminally ill that you needed to be there. So our family was able to rent one of the apartments and be there while she was in ICU. And thankfully, the next day, like she recovered pretty quickly. They were able to take her off the ventilator. And I remember when they took her off the ventilator, I went to sit down and she's like, no, that's Nanny's seat. And Nanny was her mom that had passed away. She's like, Nanny was sitting there all night long, holding my hand and telling me like to get better and helping me breathe. It was like so I was just like, my mom doesn't really believe in stuff like that. For her to like
Yeah.
say those things, so I was like, wow, that's unbelievable. And then about a month later, she was able to have the liver transplant. And it was a touch and go for a very, very long time. And it was probably one of the most stressful situations that I've ever
Yeah.
dealt with. And at home was the space that I needed to be able to fall apart. I needed to be able to be calm in the hospital and there for my mom and my siblings, but I needed a safe space to fall
Yeah.
apart. And I was finding out very quickly that my home was not a safe space for me to fall apart. That everything that was going on with my mom, my ex was pretty resentful of, and he said that to me. He told me that he wasn't resentful of my mom, he was resentful of the circumstance. And I'm like, okay, like I think we all are a little bit. Nobody likes the
Yeah.
circumstance. But he would make comments to saying, our life is on hold while your mom is sick. Our life is on hold. And I'm like, I don't know whose life is on hold, but like mine is very much going on and it's a fucking nightmare. Like it's awful. So it became something that at home I was having to constantly deal with his negativity and his yelling at me while at the same time I'm
Looking
dealing
after
with
your
my
mum.
mom in the hospital. And once my mom was out of the woods, I was completely like destabilized, where like I was crying all the time. Every single emotion that I had felt in the hospital and couldn't express started coming out. And my ex, honestly, he yelled at me a lot about it, told me to get it together. But there was one point that was so bad that my mom's like, listen, Sam, if you don't do something, I think I might have to like admit you because now it's getting so bad that it's getting scary. And I ended up starting therapy then. It's been 6 years that I've been in therapy straight now at this point when I started in therapy then.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, there was a Backstreet Boys tour that was announced, and my friend and I were super excited. We got tickets. And so I had something fun to look forward to. And one
Yeah.
of the things my mom always taught me was that even when things are like difficult, you have to look for something good. And
Always.
so for me, the Backstreet Boys was the something good. It was something from my childhood that like lights me up, being able to go and like with adult money and get your front row ticket and your meet and greet and like make your whole little teenage dream come true. There's something healing about it. I can't explain it, but being able to
The
be your
nostalgia.
it's the nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's the ability to be your most authentic self, I think, in those moments where you embrace your inner child. And for me, just having the show to look forward to with my best friend
Yeah.
was something to take my mind off of the shit that was going on with my mom and the fact that I knew her life was in danger at every moment. And that was something that my ex gave me a whole lot of shit about. And when I tell you that it got so bad that I think half of the arguments in my marriage were about the Backstreet Boys, about him telling me that it's inappropriate and weird for me to like going to concerts. And granted, at this point, I had gone to like one a year. And he's not taking into account the fact that my mom is fighting for her life, and this is just something that is good that I can do for myself to give myself something happy to look forward to. And he honestly, he made my life a living hell over
When
it.
did
He wanted me.
when did you realize that he's not the guy that you thought he was?
There's a specific incident that stood out actually that it was after my mom was in the ICU for the first time before her liver transplant, when she was on the ventilator, and I was up at the hospital for about a week. And when I was coming home, because he had to go home and work, and I stayed at the hospital during the week and took the time off and stayed with my siblings. So when I was on my way home, I called him and I was like, hey, listen, I'm on my way home. I'll be home in about an hour. I need to fall the fuck apart. Like, I've been keeping it together for the past, 5, 6 days for my family, and I can just feel it in my body that I need to let all of this out. So, like, when I get home, he just be there for me and just hug me, like, if you're playing your video games, just wrap it up or whatever. And he's like, yeah, no problem. My mom sent over ziti, so I can put that in the oven. And when you get home, fine. When I got home, I walked in the door and the video games are on. I was like, okay, like maybe he'll shut it off a little bit. And I got myself settled and I waited for him to turn off the video games and he wouldn't. When I asked him to, he snapped at me. And he's like, let me finish this game. God, why do you have to like interrupt me? And I'm like, I literally called you ahead of time and asked you if you could wrap it up before I got there, and you said yes. So I ended up going in the kitchen. I was gonna go and like heat up the ziti that his mom made, and it didn't need to be heated up. It needs to be cooked fully. So I'm like, okay, so let me put this in the oven, cook it, so we can have food in an hour. And then we get into a big argument about his video games. And the fact that I need to fall apart and I won't give him the time to finish up his game and everything has to be like at my timing and when I say, and I'm just like, what is going on? So when the timer went off for the lasagna or the ziti, I went into the kitchen and I grabbed the tray it was on and it slid off the tray and fell all over the floor. And when the lasagna fell, or when the ziti fell all over the floor, so did I. I just like collapsed and started crying hysterically. It was like everything that I had just experienced, I felt deeply, deeply in my body, and I could not take it anymore. And he came running. So for a minute, I thought he was coming running to finally be there for me. And he comes running and he starts yelling at me for dropping the ziti that his mom made us and tells me to go cry in the room while he cleans it up. And so I was left to cry by myself and then spend the next few days arguing with him over the fact that he left me crying by myself and the way he reacted. And I remember that moment so vividly because I knew my mom's life was on the line. I knew
Yeah.
that I was losing or potentially losing the best person I ever knew.
Yeah.
And now I was also realizing that if that happened, I wouldn't have anybody because the
You're on
person
your
who
own.
had promised to spend their whole life taking care of me wasn't going to at all. And that if my mom passed away, it was going to be an inconvenience for him. And I was acutely aware of the fact that it was going to be an inconvenience for him.
Yeah.
And I remember even writing in my journal, like, I feel like I'm losing my mom and I'm losing Mark all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you probably were in that sense because you'd
I
realized
was.
he
I
was
was
lost
losing the
too.
vision that I had,
Yeah.
like I was losing my ex, I was losing my mom in two different ways, and it was like the rose-colored glasses that I was wearing during the relationship. They didn't quite shatter. They got a crack in them.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about a year ago, year and a half ago, that the rose-colored glasses completely shattered and I was able to see things for what they really are. And in order to do that, it took in September 2020, my mom ended up coming a really long way from her liver transplant. And she had a bucket list of things she was like fighting for while she was in the hospital. So she wanted one of us to have a kid so she could have a grandkid. She wanted to take a beach vacation. She wanted to dance with my brother at his wedding. And so little by little, she was kind of able to do all those things as she got better. And I just watched her like try and look for whatever good she could. And then in September 2020, about 3 weeks after my brother's wedding, after the last thing on her bucket list, her appendix burst and her immune system was too compromised to recover from it. And so we ended up losing her after the burst appendix. And it was traumatic.
Yeah.
I can still remember the moment that we knew that she was gone. I can still like
Yeah.
feel what it was like to fall to my knees and just collapse and start crying hysterically and feel a type of pain that unless you've been through it, you just can't describe it. And
Yeah.
I thought it would destroy me. I genuinely didn't think that I would be able to make it through losing my mom. And it took me about 2 years
Yeah.
to come out of the initial like wave of shock and grief that had come over me, where I
Yeah.
was just extremely depressed. I didn't know what life was going to look like anymore because my entire life I pictured my mom in my future. So now, like, how is this future going to exist when my mom is not here and the person that I married isn't who I thought that they were?
Yeah.
What kind of future am I even going to have? Um, and when things opened back up after COVID and we were able to actually start going out and see people, that's actually when things started to change for me. I was in town and I saw a sign, or this one wasn't in town. This was on the town's Facebook page that I saw and noticed that they were looking for softball coaches. And I would just remember that my mom used to coach softball for me when I was younger. And it reminded me of her. And I was like, you know what? I don't have kids, but if they need extra coaches, like I like volunteering my time. Why not volunteer my time? It'll get me out of the house. So I did that, and going down to the field to do that, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It helped get me out of the house. It gave me something to do with purpose, and it allowed me to see a sign for cheerleading for the town, which is what I really wanted to coach. And so I reached out to them when I saw the sign. I was like, hey, I'm a former cheerleader. I was wondering if you guys needed any coaches for the season. Like, I'd love to volunteer my time, and they absolutely needed coaches. So I was able to be the assistant coach for the JV team that year. And that ignited a new passion inside of
Mhm.
me because I loved working with that age group. They were like seventh grade girls, and it's one of my favorite age groups to work with. When I was part of the church, I was involved in the youth groups because I loved working with kids like teenagers and stuff. So being able to work with the girls and really feel like I was making a difference more than just teaching them cheerleading, it kind of reignited that passion in me. And it was a little reminder that, oh, I can do some things that I enjoy. Like this is part of what my mom was talking about when she's like, choose the things that are positive, choose what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, there was a Backstreet Boys concert. They did a second leg of the tour once everything opened back up. So, of course, I wanted to go to the concert. Of course, I was given hell about it, but I went anyway. It was one of those where he'd say, I'm not controlling you because you go anyway. And it's like, I go anyway, but you're trying to control how I feel about it. I'm
Yeah, you're
literally
there
have to.
feeling guilty. You're there feeling guilty
Yes. And I
of
have to
the
deal with the bullshit
repercussions when you
before
get
and
back.
after. Like I can enjoy myself for the time of the concert, but there's going to be repercussions for
Yeah,
it.
of
But
course.
I went anyway.
Yeah,
And I remember being at the concert, and it was the first time since my mom passed away that I felt real joy, that
yeah,
I was in the moment, experiencing it, happy, both my adult self, like feeling just free because I'm in an environment around friends that don't scrutinize me and accept me, and then being around this music and being with all these people that are sharing the same experience, it brought me so much joy. And for a second, I was like, how could I possibly be happy right now when my favorite person is gone? Like, it doesn't seem right to be having fun when mom's not here. And I remember my mom would never want me to stop life
no, of
because she
course.
wasn't there. Like, my choices would be to stop life and let it destroy me,
Yeah.
or find a way to make it through
Mm.
and learn how to hold space for both pain and grief at the same time. And for me, it became all of these boy band concerts, not just the Backstreet Boys, but I've seen like everybody you can think of going to like 90s concerts. I've gone to 90s conventions where they do all the TV show reunions from the 90s, all like the Full House and Saved by the Bell and like all
Yeah.
those 90s shows. And for someone who grew up watching so much of like 90s pop culture influencing me, being able to step into that environment as an adult, it just brings out the most authentic version of myself. And so when I started to notice these things, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be purposeful about putting positive things that light me up into my
Yeah.
life. So I started to kind of have this not dual life, but these kind of opposing ideas of what life should look like. Where I had my relationship that I was still trying to make work out. I was still, trying to tell him, like, maybe if you get help or we get help together, like, it took me a long time to realize like this is abusive and it's not going to change. Like, I need to be the one to change it by removing myself from the situation. But in that, I was also able to take time with my friends and step away from the house and be able to be myself for a little bit and feel just
Yeah.
like completely free and at peace. Whereas I would come home and I would feel constant anxiety and
Yeah.
constant stress. And then I finally reached a breaking point last year, and that was when I had went to a concert for AJ from the Backstreet Boys and Joey from NSYNC that were doing a tour together. And I was trying to share a bit of it with him. So Joey does this one part where he sings one of the NSYNC songs with like a Frank Sinatra vibe. And my ex
Yeah.
liked Frank Sinatra. So I was like, oh, this is a way for me to share my interest with him, like include him in my life. And I
Yeah.
showed him the video, and there's one point where Joey hits a high note and everybody is like, cheering and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, Joey. And he's like, is that you screaming for him? Is that you screaming for another man? Like, do you think that's
Oh my
appropriate that
God.
you have to be front row, that you have to be sitting there like screaming his name, like acting like that? And it became this huge argument. And so I said to him, I feel like you're purposefully trying to push me away and you're purposefully trying to get me to leave because that would be the easier thing than going and dealing with your own insecurities that are causing
Yeah.
you to act this way. And he said to me, you think it would be easier for me to lose half this house, half my paycheck, half my 401k? That's it. He didn't say shit about it being hard to lose me. And like in that moment, my little rose-colored glasses shattered. I
That
heard my
moment.
mom in my head clear as day saying, I taught you better than to let a man treat you this way.
Yeah.
And I realized he's not going to change because
No.
he doesn't care about me and the relationship. He cares about keeping the money. So if the relationship stays exactly the way it is, he's perfectly fine because he doesn't want to lose any money if we lose the relationship. He cares nothing about whether he loses me. And that was eye-opening for me. And it was then led to a weekend of ups and downs where he would scream at me and then minutes later be perfectly fine and be like, but I'm just like really lonely. It was like split personalities where it
Yeah.
left me like completely just stunned by it. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the craziest thing that I've ever experienced. And that was the time that my therapist was like, I really think you need to reach out to Jersey Battered Women's Services. I really think you need to talk to somebody and be educated about the dynamics of abuse because it's not always just physical. And it seems like every time you start getting better and you start doing well and we're close to cutting your sessions down, something happens and you're back to where you were and there's a common denominator there. So maybe reach out to them and at least hear what they have to say, tell them what's going on. And so that was the third time she had suggested it. And I finally called because at that point I was fed up and I had realized I need to get out of this relationship.
Yeah.
It it was a really overwhelming experience for me to come to terms with what the reality of the relationship was, that I had spent 5 years living in the potential of the relationship when things started to change. And I always felt like we had the potential to have this great love because we had it, right? When we were dating, but I didn't look at the reality. And the
Yeah.
reality was that I was being treated terribly, was that I was being put down, that my every move was being scrutinized, that if I was sick, there was comments about, oh, you're always sick. And it's like, thanks, like Captain Obvious, I'm not enjoying feeling this way. Um, One of the things that also helped me was the fact that I got diagnosed with ADHD. And I was then treated for that. And the first time that I was put on medication for it, I cried because I didn't realize it was possible to think one thought at a time. I had spent my whole life with dozens of thoughts always running through my head, one to another. And the first time I took the medication, I was like sitting at my desk doing my work. And like, I just started to realize that my brain was quiet. And I was like, my brain has never been quiet before. But being able to quiet myself and to think one thought at a time, it allowed me to see things very clearly. It allowed
Yeah.
me to stop feeling so confused by what was going on and
Yeah.
to see it for what it was and start making a plan to get myself out.
Yeah. What was the plan then? How did you finally get out of that relationship? Because it sounds an awful one to be in.
Yeah. So I had decided last September that I needed to get out. And I first started, looking for apartments in New Jersey, trying to figure out on my paycheck, which was, I made like 3 times less than he did. So I was going to have to find something that I could afford. And I became really discouraged real quickly because rent in New Jersey is more than like my paychecks combined for a month. So I was like, okay, I'm really screwed and I don't know what I'm going to do. And just on a whim, I decided to look up apartments in Jacksonville, Florida, because that's where my best friend lives. And her and I, for years, have joked that she should move to New Jersey or I should move to Florida because we're always flying to each other to go to concerts and stuff. So I was like, you know what? Let me just see how much, apartments are by Brook. And it was like 3 times less than
Yeah.
what it was in New Jersey. And I was like, huh. I think this is something I could do, and I work remotely, so I wouldn't have to look for a new job. I would just have to look for a new apartment. I could keep my job, keep my pay, move to a cheaper state. I was like, hmm. So I had already had a trip planned down here for her and I to go to a 90s convention. I ended up extending it and I rented an Airbnb for like 4 days and I took a trip down here and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna clear my head. I'm gonna get some space. I'm gonna think about what I want and I'm gonna see if living here is something that would even be possible. And oh my God, the peace that I felt immediately when I got here, I can't even explain it. It was like I knew that this is
Yeah.
where I needed to be. And so while I was there, I started looking up apartments. I went and looked at a place with my friend and I was like, wow, I can see myself living here. And this vision started creating in my head of
Yeah.
seeing myself being in Florida and being in the sunshine by the pool with my books and my journals and like writing and all of that kind of stuff. And it
Yeah.
was like just this picture in my head of I think that's what I want to do. And little by little, I just started taking the steps to get there, but it was hostile in my house because I couldn't afford to move out right
Yeah.
away. And moving to Florida, it took, me having to make plans to come back down here and actually look at apartments, make sure I had doctors set up down here because I didn't want to come and not have mental health support. And so I had to live in the same house while I had filed for divorce and everything else was going on. So there was a lot of tension and the stress that it started to cause me, um, was some of the worst that I've ever experienced in my life. I lost so much weight. I was probably 20 pounds thinner than I am right now, which is significantly
Yeah. It's a lot.
thinner. Um, and I got to a point where I became like obsessed with my hair. And I think it's just my brain was struggling to process everything that was going on. So it gave me something else to bug me. And it felt like I was getting hair stuck in the back of my throat. It was getting on my face. And I became so hyper fixated on it that I couldn't function anymore. And finally, I had to call my brother and I asked him to take me to the hospital. And I admitted myself inpatient. And that was one of the worst and best experiences of my life because if you've ever had to go inpatient on a psych ward, it is one of the scariest things that you can
I've had guests
experience.
that's been in them and they've explained it and it doesn't sound fun.
No, and you're not just with people that are dealing with similar things with you. So you're dealing with people with all kinds of mental health conditions. It's a very scary place to be. And I cried for like the first 2 days straight. All I did was cry, sleep, and eat. And I remember my best friend called me on the second night I was there or third night when she was finally able to get the phone number. And she's like, I know that it's really hard right now and that like it's overwhelming, but she's like, I can't tell you how many times I wish I could just stop and let somebody else take care of me. And right now you're in a place where they're gonna tell you when you need to eat, tell you when to sleep, tell you when to shower, and like make sure that all your basic needs are taken care of and you don't have to think about any of that. So she's like, just take care of yourself and do the program and get yourself better. And that's exactly what I did
Yeah.
is once I got over that initial like shock of what it was like to be there, because when I admitted myself, that's not what I thought where I was going to happen. You know, I was thinking like resort retreat type place, wellness center, not psychiatric ward.
Yeah.
So my phone was taken, everything was
Oh
taken
God.
from
Yeah.
me, and like it was absolutely terrifying. But I started to work the program, and after I had been there for a week, I had developed some habits that were really helpful for me. I'd learned how to be mindful of my mood. I started, getting my movement in every day and walking, making sure I was eating, making sure I was sleeping. And when I was discharged to an intensive outpatient program. And I stuck with that program and they supported me for, let's see, from February until the end of May, when I was finally able to get an apartment in Florida and start making the move. So I knew that because of the stress that the divorce was taking on me, that I
Yeah.
needed to have that extra support in my life
Yeah.
so that I never ended up in a situation where I had to like admit myself inpatient because I am fixated on something that's not even really going on because the stress is so much. And I'm thankful that I did that. Like, I'm a huge fan of therapy. Like, therapy will change your life, especially if you've
Yeah.
experienced a lot of traumatic stuff. Like, I've kind of
Definitely.
glossed over some of the stuff I've been through. Um, but therapy has been life-saving, and that kind of helped me to gain the confidence that I needed to take the steps to make a move to Florida. And I remember I came down here, I looked at some apartments, I knew which ones I liked, and then it was a matter of a waiting game because when things became available, you had to be able to jump on them quickly to get a good deal
Yeah.
for it, to get a good price. So I just kept an eye on all of the apartments. And when one of the places I loved sent an email saying they were offering 6 weeks free, the first 6 weeks of rent for free, I was like, okay, this sounds like the perfect opportunity for me to be able to move to Florida and give myself a 6 week buffer before I have to start paying any rent. And so just kind of in faith, I jumped on it and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna fucking do this. Like I'm going to move to Florida and I got approved for it. I called movers. I charged a lot of stuff on my credit card and was like, fuck it, it'll pay
Yeah.
for
Of
it in
course.
divorce settlement because I'm
Let's
like,
get
I
there.
need to get myself out of here. And I took my little puppy and it was like 9:30 at night that I decided to drive through the night to come to Florida. That way there wasn't too much traffic. So I woke up at 9:30 p.m. and got in my car with my pup and we drove straight through, just stopping for traffic or for gas. And it took about like 15 hours, I think.
15
Like I
hours.
felt like a badass. I really did. I was like, I'm driving down the whole damn country by myself through the night and I'm starting a new life. And honestly, since I've been here, I have started to thrive in a way that I never have before. Just being in my own environment that's safe and that is peaceful, where there's no one scrutinizing me, all of a sudden I can do the things that are helpful to me. I can focus on healing myself. So now I have like an incredible routine every day. I wake up and like walk on my treadmill because I don't like exercise. So I have to motivate myself to exercise. So I get thriller novels and I power walk on the treadmill. I have my breakfast, I journal, I have like my regular journal and my guided journals. I will go down to the pool on my lunch breaks and I'll sit in the sunshine and I'll read my books. I'll take another 30 minutes on the treadmill in the afternoon. I'll have some lunch, walk the puppy. And then in the evening, I'll work on like my own little side hustle stuff that I'm trying to build. In the mornings, I work on like writing my book that I've been doing. But literally, the change of environment was everything that I
Yeah.
needed in
Yeah.
order to be able to heal. And I knew that like a year ago when I was like, I think I really need to be serious about getting out of this relationship because it's
Yeah.
getting dangerous. Even when I would doubt myself and he would ask me, like, are you sure about this? Like, I feel like you're going through stuff. And then like a year from now, you're going to regret your decision. And, that's going to be it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm sure, but what I'm sure about is that I can't heal here. So unless
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
willing to separate and then see what happens, like, no, I need to file for divorce because I can't heal in the environment that broke me. I just
No,
can't.
exactly. Yeah, you can't. Of course you can't.
So now that I'm here in Florida, like me and my friend, we always have something to look forward to. So there's
Yeah,
always some kind of concert to
definitely.
go to.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
went to Vegas to see the Backstreet Boys,
Yeah.
and being able to go and see them at the Sphere and not have anybody like giving me shit before or afterwards, and just being able to go and enjoy it with my friends was such a liberating experience. We had my divorce party in Vegas. I wore a little sash that said divorced as fuck. And we were like, let's just celebrate because you know what? If the Backstreet Boys were the thing that he gave me like the most hell about, and it's the literal, like, there could be worse things that you're addicted to. You know what I
I
mean?
think so. I think so.
But like it was kind of, I don't know, kind of a giant fuck you.
Yeah.
And going there for the divorce party. And the irony is not lost on me that my bachelorette party was in Vegas for the Backstreet Boys' first residency, and my divorce party was their second one.
It's gone full circle.
Hey, whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's such a story of strength for you to go through what you went through, dealing with your mum's health, and you could tell that she meant the world to you. You're dealing with that, and then you've got like somebody that's not there supporting you, narcissistic, gaslighting you there as well when you need support more than anything there as well. It's exhausting, and you're so right about as a therapist. I'm constantly telling clients that your environment is everything. You are a
Mhm.
product of your environment. If you stay in that environment and it's a negative one, it's going to affect you there as well. And it's been like a movie, getting in a car and driving at night 15 hours to Florida is just,
Mhm.
and to get there and it's a new start and it
It was
can,
like I drove into my new life,
yeah.
and I remember someone said to me, like, weren't you nervous, like being a woman driving like down the country by yourself in the middle of the night? And I was like, huh, maybe I should have been, but I
You didn't
wasn't.
think about it. It's just like,
Like
which
now that I
way?
think
Keep
about
going
it,
straight. So, yeah,
maybe I should have been a little bit more cautious, but no, like I felt powerful. I felt like
I
a
think so.
badass because I was choosing myself,
You were
and I
taking
had
your
never
power back.
chosen myself.
Yeah,
And I had been so afraid of being alone and having him use that fear against me so often with like the threats of abandonment. Because when I filed for divorce, like I mentioned divorce once, and it was when I was serious about it.
yeah,
He would bring it up all the time. And he said to me, like, I would have never actually divorced you. And I'm like, okay, so you were just using the threat of it to
threat.
manipulate and control me? Like, no. So
Yeah,
finally, I decided I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to choose to love myself. I'm going to choose to not seek it out from other people. And I'm going to
yeah,
choose to find it in myself. And learning to do that has been the most life-changing experience for me ever. Like, I feel like I have a new light about me. I can
yeah,
do the things that light me up on a day-to-day basis. There's nobody scrutinizing my bedtime. There's nobody scrutinizing like me going down to the pool. There's nobody that I have to worry about if they're in a bad mood. I just have to worry about me and putting myself first and learning to truly love myself and like understanding what that looks like and presenting myself, you know, in going to myself with compassion and not judgment. and being able to teach myself to not be harsh and to quiet that inner voice. And something I noticed is that that inner critic that was in my head constantly talking shit to me, quiet it down as soon as I got stable in this environment. And I
Yeah.
realized that that wasn't my voice. That was somebody else's voice that was telling me who I am. And now I'm going to determine who I am. I'm going to determine what my life looks like. And now my life literally looks like what I just vaguely pictured it looking like a year ago when I started. I'm here, I'm in the sunshine. I go down to the pool and read my books. I do my journals. I've been working on writing my book. I'm literally doing everything that was just a thought in my mind a year ago. And that blows
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah. I was going to say, how do you feel looking back now from where you were to where you are now?
Oh my gosh. I feel proud of myself,
Yeah,
one.
definitely.
I feel really proud of myself. There's certain things to look back on that there's a sense of grief because there's time lost, right?
Of course.
So you're like looking back on it now with the rose-colored glasses completely shattered, you see it for what it was, you know? And looking back on that, you're like, how did I not see that? How did I put up with that for so long? You know, you can just be like,
There's a
wow,
there's a
that
reason
was
why
rough. Like
people,
reading my journals, because I
yeah,
journal so much, is like reading a thriller novel where I'm
yeah,
like waiting for the main character to get murdered and I'm like, run, bitch, run. And like, it's me, you know? But I feel really proud of myself, and it's the most like my mom I've ever felt, which is to me one of the best things that I can have because I admired my mom's ability to bounce back, her resilience, and her ability to look for fun and exciting things and whatever it was that made her happy, even when bad shit was going down.
yeah,
And now I actually feel like I'm living in my mom's legacy. I'm taking what she taught me and I'm really running with it, you know, and I'm making it my own. And that makes me feel proud of myself and it makes me feel empowered. I'm
yeah,
like, wow, I'm capable of creating the life that I want for myself because
yeah,
the life I'm living right now was just an idea in my head a year ago.
yeah. Yeah. Now nobody's going to stop you. You're going to be unstoppable. You're never going to
Yep.
be in the certain circumstances you were before. You've learnt too
No.
much. You've got that internal validation, and you know what it's like to achieve your goals now. So
Yeah. And I
that
know what it's like to love myself
exactly.
enough to know that I won't sacrifice pieces of
No.
myself for another person again.
I think anyone listening to your story will feel inspired. And the whole point of the podcast, when I decided to set the podcast up, I would speak to some of my clients and I said, what would you want from them? Because a lot of mental health podcasts are really dull, they're really dry. It's two therapists talking, nobody's got a clue what they're on about. And it's even being a therapist, I'm like, oh, I don't care about this. And I was like, what would be interesting? It's like an interesting story where somebody's had the adversity that we can relate to and then feel what they've been through, we can feel inspired by. And I think for me, a lot of people will be able to relate to your story,
Thank you.
both parts of it, and then for what you've then gone on to do to like thrive. I think is brilliant there. So I think anyone listening will get so much from your story. Samantha, it's been amazing listening to you. I really love everything that you've done, especially moving down to Florida and achieving all the things that you set out to do and overcome everything that you have done. So thanks ever so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.